You're listening to the Black Eagles podcast.
Ahmet Dursun Sergen aldı. Sergen Bülent yan yana. Sergen Bülent. Sergen. Yanında Tümer var. Tümer'e doğru attı. Kaybetti. Tümer topu aldı. Sergen aldı. Gol. Sergen attı. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi.
İbrahim'in pası. Zuma. Şimdi Ahmet. İkinci gole gidiyor Beşiktaş. Ahmet.
Welcome back, everybody. This is episode 228 of the Black Eagles podcast. I am, of course, your host, Sinan. That's right, back again. Well into our 200s at this point. Of course, everyone knows this is going to be a special episode. Fun things have occurred, in a sense, right? A big match, a derby against Fenerbahçe. Obviously, that's what we're here to talk about. But, yeah, I guess first of all, let's talk a little bit about some news. Speaking of Fenerbahçe, they've supposedly come in and tried to snake Sorloth from underneath us, just as they had Talisca and Abubakar. So this is something of an MO for them. Elsewhere, there's not a ton of news. I waited to drop this episode for today's match. It was Antalyaspor against Konya. It's relevant to all of us in the standings and to how the rest of our season will bear out. So I thought, I'll kind of hang on to see if there's a result there that keeps the season more intriguing than it would be otherwise. Obviously, everyone who is in tune knows how that went. Antalyaspor was a big win, making Konya kind of irrelevant for the most part. We'll get into all that later. I guess what we're going to do here, first of all, obviously, we're talking Beşiktaş versus Fenerbahçe.
Operation is in effect as of right now.
Fenerbahçe, whatever. I hate pronouncing their name. I hate this team. Personally, I should probably mention that my Turkish side of my family, the Turkish side of my family, were largely Fenerbahçe fans. God, I always pronounce that weird. It's like a mental tick I can't overcome. I despise them so much. I mean, it's a funny story. I never was a fan of theirs, despite my family sort of all suggesting I should be. Obviously, everyone out there speaks English pretty well, listening to an English language podcast. And I've said this before, so a little bit of a repeat. But for anyone out there who doesn't know how I became a Beşiktaş fan, obviously a born and raised New Yorker and the whatever. The story is basically, I have 95% of my family, maybe 99% honestly, and they're all Fenerbahçe fans. They're all, we love Fenerbahçe. Do you love them too? And then I have like the one uncle who speaks English fluently, and rather than just sort of saying that, and remember, right? Like, football is not just right. Language is one thing, but then football, there's a culture behind it. So it's like the logic for a Turk is like, of course you love this team that your family loves, right? But like, when you're not from Turkey, when you're from the United States especially, where there's not really a culture of the sport, it needs to be kind of explained a little bit, right? So my uncle, who was really fluent in English, works for Honeywell, a really successful guy, whatever, he sat me down and he's talking me through the club's ethos, the philosophy, what it means to be a Beşiktaş fan, all of this stuff. So of course, that's the thing that really compels me, the black and white sort of lore and all of that. So here I am, right, making a Beşiktaş podcast, giving Beşiktaş fans something to listen to, an international audience potentially, right? And it's literally because of the one uncle who spoke English well. So for anyone out there who's listening, you have the power to expand the fan base. Anyway, so obviously all of that going into my personal history is to say that I had a lot of pressure to become a Fenerbahçe fan. Instead, obviously here we are. And so that's why these derbies matter a lot to me. Even in a season like this where everything's done and dusted. I've made jokes about how I hope we can keep Fenerbahçe from reaching the Champions League so they don't get that money and all that, right? There's a deep-seated, very passionate hatred for them. And of course, anyone who's a Beşiktaş fan knows about the history of them constantly trying to steal our transfers and play these sort of mental games with us. But, so, for me personally, doing this podcast as your host, there's that personal angle too. I've always despised this club. So let's talk about this match, I suppose. Obviously, that's what we're all here for. And as usual, we'll start with our lineups. For Beşiktaş, a crazy lineup. Both sides were thoroughly depleted by injuries, suspensions, all that. But Beşiktaş, in particular, was hit hard in the sense that they had to create these very makeshift lines. Especially look at the defensive line, right? You have Serdar Saçi and Wellington, who are somewhat typically there. And then you have Umut Meraş on the back line. And then, here's where things get crazy. As wingbacks, of course, we have Rıdvan Yılmaz, who's in a poor run of form, if we're going to be honest. Ever since the scouts started tracking him, he's kind of fallen off. But opposite him, as a right wing back, with Valentin Rosier suspended, we had Kenan Karaman, which, nobody expected to see. I would assume. Joseph de Souza and İlkan in the midfield, with Rashid Ghezal in the middle behind Michy Batshuayi and Kyle Larin. So for folks who were worried that Valérien Ismail didn't have a plan B from his West Brom days, apparently he has a plan B and C. We're even seeing some variation regarding the front line. So I guess there's a silver lining. But obviously, this was going to be a tough match. Excuse me for that. This is going to be a tough match on various fronts. Not only do we have this kind of weird, crazy, makeshift Plan C lineup, but we also have opposition that's quite hot. Fenerbahçe is probably, given everything I've already said, it pains me to say this, that's the hottest team in Turkey right now. They're on a great tear, great run of form. They're in a solid second place, playing real well to close out the season. And given how poorly Trabzonspor has played, one could probably make the argument that they're the strongest side in the league right now. Fenerbahçe, I mean. Trabzon has notoriously, flailed across the finish line. Of course, they've won. I've already given my celebrations to them. I'm not wasting any more time with that. But, yeah, for me, this is the hottest team in Turkey right now. And so I came into this one quite negative. Not negative to the extent that I did, ironically, with Kasim Pasha. With that one, I just had a real bad feeling. This time, I thought, with the derby, you're always going to get a fight. We've sold out our stadium. We had a loud, rambunctious home atmosphere. You expected a match here, no doubt. But I'll be 100% honest. I didn't expect to get a result. Straight up, I just didn't see it happening. So, that was my take coming into it. Now let's talk about their lineup. And they were depleted too. Altay Bayındır in their goal. Filip Novak and Marcel Tisserand, 29-year-old Congolese defender, next to him on the back line. Nazim Sangare, 27-year-old quote-unquote Turk, opposite Ferdi Kadiolu, the Dutch Turk, 22-year-old, who has settled into that wing-back position in his last few matches and really shined there. I wouldn't be surprised if that was essentially his new role. We'll see how that pans out. Up ahead of him in the midfield, you had Miha Zajc, 27-year-old Slovenian, who's kind of gaining relevance in their lineup this season. Luis Gustavo, 34-year-old Brazilian, next to him. In front of them, Mert Hakan Yandaş, 27-year-old Turk, who I don't really rate particularly highly. I'll keep it 100. Irfan Can Kahveci was the right wing, 26-year-old Turk, very talented man. Opposite Diego Rossi, 24-year-old Uruguayan left wing. Irfan Cankaveci is undoubtedly talented, although he's also undoubtedly inconsistent, so you never quite know what to expect from him. Up top for Fenerbahçe, their in-form striker, Serdar Dursun, 30-year-old, kind of late bloomer. We'll see what comes of his career in general. But yeah, he has 14 goals this year. He's got the same goal and assists numbers as Michy Batshuayi. For anyone curious, 14 and 3. So let's talk about this match, right? Like, what else is there to say? Both sides impacted by issues, we could say. Domagoj Vida injured. Mert Gunok, obviously permanently injured. Jalai injured. Pelkas injured. Crespo, for them, injured. Serdar Aziz carded out. Valentin Rosier carded out. Javi Montero carded out for us, right? Like, this is going to be... Arda Güler was out for this as well with a minor injury. Kim Min-jae is out. I'm not exactly sure why, but I'm assuming because they're just keeping him healthy, knowing he's on his way out. They want to see what they have, what to build on with next year. But so yeah, like I said, both sides depleted. But I think you could definitely make the argument that Beşiktaş was the more impacted by those issues, having to really piece together a squad with whatever they could find. I mean, obviously Kenan Karaman at right wing back being the underlined, the highlighted point there. But so yeah, let us dig in. So first of all, right out of the gates, 3rd minute of the match, a free kick, and Fener is looking the more lively initially. I think we could all agree. 3rd minute, free kick from Mert Hakan Yandaş. Finds Filip Novak, who sends a shot in, and Kyle Larin clears it off the line. Not really off the line, but I mean, kind of well defended from Kyle Larin, oddly. And he's only back there because it was a free kick, and so everyone was sort of positioned back there. 5th minute, another one, this time a corner kick. Maybe a reaction to that free kick, to that clearance, rather, by Kyle Larin. Anyway, the corner kick is defended out, drops to Ferdi Kadıoğlu, who does a good job kind of just connecting on a volley, one touch, sends it right back. Just trying to cause chaos. It's not like an intentional pass to anyone by any stretch. I mean, he's just kicking it into the box. Excuse me for hitting the mic. And it just so happens that Kyle Larin, the very same Kyle Larin, for some reason is just holding our line behind the goal, kind of decides to come back into play, and as such, he keeps Serdar Dursun and Filip Novak on side. They both seem to be way off, so I think most of Beşiktaş's defense shuts down, assuming, okay, plays over, they're offsides. Surprise! Kyle Larin has decided to keep them on, and therefore, bang, a goal. An assist by Serdar Dursun, so he got that. I think that was the 3rd assist that levels him with Michy Batshuayi's number. And so yeah, not good. Not a good start. We are down 0-1. And what's worse is that our fans are acting like petulant children, throwing things onto the pitch at the players of our position. Our guys have to come out and tell them to calm down a number of times. So it's almost like there's a little justice being served here, unfortunately. Certainly they seem to have been motivated by the atmosphere, if anything. So that's never good. I'm always the type who says never motivate your opponents, no matter what you think you're doing, because of course there's a chance you'll get into their head, you're gonna do something positive, but there's also a chance you're gonna be helping them when you play these games. And for me, it's best to just let the stuff happening on the pitch dictate things, because I mean, I think a crowd can be an advantage when they're just getting loud and boisterous and supporting the team. Once they start motivating opposition by getting them angry and making them want to shut the crowd up and stuff, right? That's when you have problems. But so, yeah. Anyway, we would get lucky, it would seem, because we woke up from that goal, as is often the case with this team this season. And sure enough, 6th minute, Kyle Larin on a sort of counter gets the ball, bounces up off of him, down onto the hand of Filip Novak. We get the call, a penalty kick. Batshuayi steps up. Power placement seems all good, except not quite. It's like an inch or two to the left, hits the post, and solidly hits the post. Not in a way that it bounces it back in to the goal or anything. Comes careening out. I think we got a corner out of it at least, but yeah. Michy Batshuayi, a missed penalty. Yikes. So, not only are we down a goal, and our fans acting impetuous and motivating our opposition, but we can't catch a break. Michy Batshuayi, just that poor man. I mean, and poor insofar as I don't want to see him in a Beşiktaş kit anymore. I feel for him. I know he's talented. He's shown the ability to score big goals, but he's also just squandered so many opportunities. How can he do this to us? It's killing us. Anyway, 12th minute, Ridvan sends a ball in perfectly weighted in air. Drops, it looks like perfectly to Kyle Larin. Novak, again, cuts it out, bringing Kyle Larin down. Was that a penalty? It was soft if it was. Now, today there was a penalty in the Antalya match that hurt Konyaspor and obviously benefits Fenerbahçe. And it was softer than probably this play, and certainly softer than a play later on that wouldn't go our way, which I'll get into. Which begs the question, how does that always happen? Why don't we ever get those 50-50s? And, I mean, I guess granted, we just gotten a penalty, which didn't go our way, but, anyway, whatever. 21st minute, Serdar Dursun gets in a nice shot, but Ersin gets down and across quickly. Great save from him. So it's still just 1-0, even though it should be at least 1-1 by now. 29th minute, Joseph de Souza, a yellow card. Irfan Can Kahveci, a yellow card. They're fighting over what looked to be a call that was not made. Kenan Karaman, kind of little fancy footwork, sort of, as he's entering the box to make a run. Brought down by Filip Novak. Maybe it was Ferdi Kadıoğlu. No, I think it was Filip Novak. And yeah, it seems an obvious penalty call. They don't even want to look at it first. Then they kind of half-heartedly look at it, and then finally the ref has to go to the screen. And I mean, again, like our team is up in arms, protesting, yelling, screaming. None of this should be necessary. Someone in the VAR booth should have seen it within minutes of the action. And immediately it should have just been, whistle blown, penalty called, etc. Instead, we have to get, Joseph gets a yellow card. And I mean, to be fair, Irfan Can Kahveci gets one as well because of this sort of back and forth. But none of this should be necessary. Like, this is their jobs. This is why we have a VAR booth. Anyway, penalty's called. This time Rashid Ghazal steps up, sends it to the left. Keeper goes right. Bang. We're on the scoreboard. It's 1-1. And it seems like, for the most part, we've taken this match as well, which is the more important aspect of this. Now, before the half is out, Wellington gets a yellow card in the 36th minute. Rashid Ghazal gets a yellow card in the 2nd minute of extra time. And Ersin Destanoğlu gets a yellow card in the 4th minute of extra time, with Mert Hakan Yandaş getting an extra time in the 4th minute of extra time as well. This is a back and forth again, of course. I don't remember exactly what this one was about, but just classic issues with the refs. Maybe they were complaining, after the whistle was blown. Whatever it is, terrible performance by the referee again. Lots of questionable calls made, as per usual, or calls not made. Lots of back and forth. We're just like allowing tensions to rise for no good reason. Like, that's essentially in a match where there aren't a ton of fouls. We're, on the pitch, not talking about people fighting and getting cards for arguing and all that, pushing each other, but it's a ref's match to keep the game in control and to make sure it doesn't get too physical, so that nobody gets hurt. So this is something that Turkish referees notoriously are just pathetic at. Anyway, halftime, 1-1. First action of the second half, 45th minute, Emirhan. The ball bounces down. He kind of makes nice contact on a perfect pass A-plus ball into the path of Kyle Larin, who's one-on-one with the keeper and just sends it into Altay's foot. A little air on it, it's a goal. You know, a little placement around the keeper, it's a goal. But instead, he just sort of kicks it low with minimal contact. I think he thinks it's an easier chance than it was. But the result, no goal on a one-on-one. The Emirhan should have an assist. Kyle Larin should have a goal. He's kind of sleeping. 49th minute, Serdar Dursun sends the ball. Oh, sorry, what am I talking about? Dursun. Serdar Sachi actually sends a lovely cross into the box, finding Rashid Ghazal on the far post. He heads it back in, finding finding Kyle Larin. And Kyle Larin heads it off the crossbar. What's going on, Kyle? You were our golden boy last year. 61st minute, Georges Cavin Nkoudou, last match's hero, comes in for Michy Batshuayi, sending Kyle Larin into the middle. I kind of got it, honestly. Michy Batshuayi was, it's one thing for him to have a bad game to the extent that he has had them before, where he's just not putting chances away. But, he still usually weighs the defense. He has positives, passes well, whatever. This is a rare bad performance from him just all around. He kind of boasts. A couple plays here and there are decent, but all in all, just not. I think he was very disheartened by missing that penalty, I assume. But so Nkoudou comes on, and I think that means Kyle Larin goes to the middle, which you understand too. Kyle Larin's missed a lot of opportunities, not having a great match, but he is at least getting into opportunities. There are chances coming from his presence. So you kind of understand the logic there. 66th minute, Ferdi Kadiolu sends in a long ball / shot. I don't remember exactly how it sort of shook out, but Umut Merash comes back and sort of heads it off the line. A nice save from him defensively. 70th minute, Ener Valencia enters the match for Serdar Dursun. They're going for pace and little energy late in the game. Bright Osai Samuel on for Irfan Can Kahveci. It is worth noting that Irfan Can Kahveci and Rossi switched sides at one point in the first half, because Irfan Can Kahveci saw a weakness in Kenan Karaman as right wing back and thought to exploit it. And that actually seemed to motivate Kenan Karaman, and he played much better from that point on, oddly enough. And obviously he didn't have a great match by any stretch, but considering he was so far out of position, he fought hard for balls. He kind of maintained himself positionally. At least he had a presence defensively far more than you'd assume he'd wander off up front and attack way more often than he should. But no, he held his own. Credit to him, honestly. And I don't say that a lot. 75th minute subs, Guven Yalchin on for Kyle Larin. You get that too. Even though I understood keeping him in over Batshuayi, because Batshuayi was so poor, he had played terribly also. So you hope, maybe you'll get one of those Guven Yalchin super sub performances. Necip Uysal for Umut Merash. And so this is where the mistakes start coming from Valérien Ismail. And in fact, it's been admitted at this point, Umut Merash looked like he'd been injured, and then he got up and was okay, but I think the assumption was that maybe he was injured, they didn't want to risk him, so they take him out. And that's a mistake. And in fact, Ismail, you see him apologize to Umut Merash late in the game. It was a mistake. And it leads to a number of other mistakes, unfortunately. So, because he has to put on Necip Uysal from Umut Merash, because we're already lacking wingback. Remember, we've got Kenan Karaman over there. He also puts on Can Bozdoğan for Rashid Ghazal, which I think means that he's sliding Kenan Karaman up, bringing Necip Uysal back. You know what I'm saying? And then we've got Necip, Wellington, Serdar, and I think we're playing 4 back then with Necip on the right side, and Kenan slid up. And then you've got Atiba coming on for Serdar Sachi, and so he is playing in the center of that defensive. It's at this point it's a confusing mess. Let's be clear. 89th minute, Nkoudou gets a yellow card, and this is how he gets the yellow card. Guven Yalchin, lovely sort of little two-touch dribble move to get past his man, runs into space, sends the ball in perfectly for Georges Cavin and Kudu, and he's brought down by Nazim Sangare. And so he gets a yellow card for complaining. And again, right, you look at the penalty awarded to Antalyaspor against Konya today. Way softer than this non-call. Probably softer than the earlier one that I had mentioned, where Kyle Larin is brought down by Novak, and it's not called. I don't know. You be the judge. I'm not going to complain too much about it, but, inconsistent refereeing in the Turkish Super League has plagued it for as long as I've followed it, and that's probably longer than most of you folks out there, given, sadly, how old I'm getting. But so, yeah, I don't know, man. Anyway, second minute of extra time, Ferdi Kadiolu gets himself a yellow card. He leaves in the 4th minute of extra time for Çağatay Kurukalip. So I think they got jealous by how well Emirhan had been playing. And so they decide to, see what their kids look like. Of course, they don't have an Emirhan, especially not with Arda Güler out. One play I missed in the 80th minute, Emirhan sends in a really lovely ball for Wellington, who's miraculously onside, heads it into the path of Can Bozdoğan, whose head is saved. Great diving save by Altay Bayındır. In fact, the header may have been wide, so we got a free corner kick out of it. But yeah, anyway, finally in the 3rd minute of extra time, Ridvan Yilmaz gets himself a yellow card. And that would be the last sort of notable action that I can really recall. Just so to remember, at the very end of the match, we've got Wellington on, Umut Meraş and Serdar Saci are off, Necip has come on, and Atiba. So I'm assuming it's Atiba. I'm assuming we go to a 2-man back line with Ridvan still out there. We've got Wellington, Necip, and then maybe Kenan Karaman stays as more of a right back in this scenario. Atiba playing kind of right ahead of them, or perhaps he's a part of a 3-man back line still. I mean, I really have no idea how things shook out at the end. It was a big mess, and we were just pressing, going for the goal. And so, we were the better side in that vein. I think we can kind of easily argue, despite, again, having the far more makeshift team. It seems like the boys really responded well to these tactics, played really well for the most part. I mean, obviously lacking the ability to score goals as usual. But, it bears out with the stats. Despite them having 60% of the ball to our 40%, and again, mostly that's first half. Second half, we were far better. We still had 9 shots to their 8, 3 big chances to their 1. We missed 2 of them, of course. One of them, of course, also being a penalty. They had 302 passes to our 176 at a 77% rate to our 68%. We committed 22 fouls to their 13. They had 8 corners to our 6. I mean, it's kind of back and forth, despite the fact that they had so much more of the ball, which speaks to the fact, I think, this was sort of by design. We let them play around with the ball in the back as much as they wanted to, but we held our position, and we were quite solid. We played with intent. So we actually had more opportunities and more shots, despite having so much less of the ball. So it shouldn't come as much of a surprise, honestly. We were the better side, I thought. Markedly, even. Now, let's talk about the top players in this match. Everyone rated above a 7. Highest rated player would be Rashid Ghezal. Of course, he scores a goal. But he had a great match all around, and I think you could kind of easily make the argument he was the man of the match. Second highest rated player, Ferdi Kadiolu. Then Miha Zajc, then Nazim Sangare, but then Emirhan İlkan, 7.41, followed by Luis Gustavo, then Kenan Karaman, Joseph de Souza, Serdar Saci, Filip Novak, Serdar Dursun, Mert Hakan Yandaş. Wellington with a 6.97, not quite making the cut. So what that means is that they had 8 players rated above a 7. We only had 5. But I think that's also, again, right, statistically speaking, they had so much of the ball, they were passing it around the back, they had a higher accuracy rate with it because of that. And so I think a lot of guys maybe had a number of passes, accurate passes, short balls, so they sort of buffed their numbers through the way they played, which would give them higher ratings. Even though, again, right, so you can say all you want about the stats and the numbers, but at the end of the day, we had more chances, more big chances. So, again, in the eye test was more important. I think people tend to over-focus on analytics these days. Reality is that we looked the better, more dangerous side. Period. So, that's the good news, despite statistics saying something else. Let's talk about Emir Han. He played a full 90 minutes, 20 of 31 with his passes at a 65% rate, but he created 2 big chances. He created 2 chances, 1 big chance. He had 50 touches. Now, he was 1 for 5 with his long balls. So that's contributing to his low accuracy rate with his passes. 1 for 3 with crosses. But the important thing is that he's trying these passes. He's trying to break through their defense. He's trying to create something. And some of it's often lacked in our rotations. Big part of why we've struggled to score. In a lot of scenarios, Batshuayi wasn't the problem so much as our inability to create the chances, the opportunities for him to put away. So Emir Han is creating more of those, and since he's been more of a presence in the rotation, we've had more chances. We've looked a more dangerous side. So that's, in a lot of ways, credit to him. He's played well as a 17-year-old, right? Now, he had 6 recoveries, which means he came back and played his role. Like, a big criticism from our group chat, one of our, Evran, for example, our old co-host, was saying he's more of a number 10 than a number 8, where we need a number 8. But again, 6 recoveries. He is coming back. He is playing that role. He won 6 of 11 ground duels. 1 of 1. He was 100% accurate with his aerial duels. He was fouled 3 times, so he was doing things on the ball. He was getting involved. He was coming back. These are good signs for a kid who's learning essentially something of a new position. It seems like he's transitioning from a 10 into more of a number 8, into more of a central midfielder. So it's a successful transition. He's a highly rated player at this point. Rashid Ghazal is the other sort of debate, I suppose we could say. He played 75 minutes, he had a goal, he was 26 out of 29 with his passes. So he actually had a very influential game in the middle of our attack. Flaring out as he is obviously capable of doing, but 62 touches, 1 of 1 with his shot accuracy, obviously it was a goal, 4 out of 5 with his dribbles. He's only 1 for 9 with his crosses, so 11%. But so despite that, he had a very successful day of passing the ball. So, credit to him, honestly. Great performance all around. He was 9 of 16 with his ground duels won, which, not stellar, but it speaks to how much he was getting involved and how he was adapting to his role in the middle of our attack. So, there's certainly an argument to be made that he could be our man of the match too. Certainly those are my top 2 candidates. Serdar Sachi would be my 3rd. He was also, if you recall, in the group of players I mentioned, rated above a 7. There's a nice highlight reel going around on Twitter of his accolades from the match, his good performance. So, if you're on Twitter, I think I've shared that from the podcast account. Check it out. But yeah, those would be my 3 candidates, and then I'll put the vote out there again, and I'll do the other as an option. But so yeah, all in all, good match. We should have won. Not a great result. And I suppose what we can do now is talk about why, in the standings, this didn't work out so well for us. So, Beşiktaş is in 7th place now. After all matches are played, Antalya almost caught us. We're level on points, but we have the goal differential. We have 55 points. Fatih Karagümrük has 56. They beat Göztepe this week, so they've passed us because of our performance here. Alanya has 58. And they're in 5th place. They're 3 points ahead of us. That is obviously bad news. Başakşehir has 61 points in 4th place. Now what that means is that they're 6 points ahead of us. They would have to lose both of their matches, and we would have to win both of our matches in order for us to be able to equal their point total. They're also at a plus 19 goal differential. We're at a plus 6. So, that ain't happening, folks. Let's just be real about it. What that means is that we're not catching Başakşehir in 4th. It's hard to catch Alanyaspor in 5th. Now, 5th is only a possibility for a spot in Europe if Trabzon wins the double. That said, here's how it's going to go, if it's possible. Alanyaspor, in their remaining matches, they still have a cup game against Sivas. So they could be a bit tired in their upcoming match against Gaziantep on Sunday. And they play Fatih Karagümrük the following week. Now, Fatih Karagümrük is also ahead of us by a point now. So this is complicated. What essentially has to happen, and to make it as simple as possible, Fatih Karagümrük, they have Fenerbahçe this weekend and then Alanyaspor the week after. What we kind of need to see happen is Fenerbahçe has to beat Fatih Karagümrük, and then Fatih Karagümrük has to defeat Alanyaspor. So that essentially, when Fener beats Fatih Karagümrük, we pass them. We go back up into 5th, 6th place. And whatever happens with Alanyaspor, hopefully they can drop points against Gaziantep. Not likely. Gaziantep's not a very strong side. But then, what would happen is we win the next week as well. And Alanya, if they lose to Fatih Karagümrük, we then go level on points. And depending on how they lose, right, they have a plus 5 goal differential. We have a plus 6 now as things stand. So that's it. It's really that simple. Fatih Karagümrük has to lose to Fenerbahçe and then beat Alanyaspor. It's quite simple in a way. And that's the only way that this works. Because, of course, if Fatih Karagümrük beats Alanya but also beats Fener, then they're still ahead of us, being a point ahead of us now. So it's really quite simple. Oddly, we're relying on Fener to win. The good news, I guess, for us is that we don't have to sort of low-key hope we can beat Konyaspor in that final match, or rather lose to Konyaspor so they can pass Fener. They're out, it looks like. 5 points back on Fenerbahçe now. They are. So Konyaspor is in 3rd place with 64 points, Fenerbahçe with 69 points, and then Trabzon, our champions, with 78. What that means is that Fenerbahçe is still... I mean, they have to try to beat Fatih Karagümrük, because in theory, of course, Konya can catch them. Although, by beating Fatih Karagümrük, they would end all speculation. So they have something to play for, in fact. That's the good news. Like, they should theoretically try to beat Fatih Karagümrük this coming weekend. And Fatih Karagümrük should try to beat Alanyaspor the following week, because they'd want to potentially pass them. And if we were to drop points, then finish in 5th and get a spot in Europe. You know, everyone has something to play for, which in this case is good for us. So we need to win out. Except for Konya, ironically. Konya's, I mean, well, I guess Başakşehir could pass them. That could change next week, though, in his coming match day. I mean, the bottom line is really quite straightforward. Right? Fatih Karagümrük needs to lose to Fener and beat Alanya, and we need to win. And then we might have that chance, you know. And of course, Trabzon has to win the cup as well, which is still not necessarily determined. I guess I could mention, speaking of the cup, right, they already have a 1-0 goal differential from the first leg going into the second leg here. Sivas has a 2-1 goal differential against Alanyaspor, so Alanya has everything to fight for. And to tire themselves about with their upcoming game against Gaziantep. So, you know, there's a world where this could still work out for us, and we could actually end up with a place in Europe next season. In fact, I mean, it's mathematically possible we could catch Başakşehir, but like only mathematically. It's, as far as likelihood goes, there's like a 0.01% chance, I would imagine. We would need to score a lot of goals in these last 2 matches, and Başakşehir would need to lose bad. So let's not count on any of that happening. But what we can count on is that I will be back I will always be back. So, upcoming, of course, our next match will be this coming Sunday. We'll be visiting Göztepe in Izmir. It is scheduled now to be at 1 p.m. Sunday, May 15th, 1 p.m. here in New York City, local time. So check your local listing as per usual. And we'll be back to report on how things go there. If we win, and let's hope we do. A, we're building on this Valerian Ismail era that we hope to have some success in. B, we're keeping our hopes alive for a spot in Europe next year. So everything to play for. Göztepe is going down. That is very much established. They're 19th place, 28 points, and no hopes of going anywhere else. The relegation is set, by the way, for anyone who is curious. Rize, Altay, Göztepe, and Yeni Malatya all going down. So that's it. That's all we got this week. See you around next week. Follow us on Twitter at Eagles_podcast. Follow us on Instagram, Black Eagles Podcast, one word. As always, follow myself at Sir_Writes_a lot. And let's go Beşiktaş! Peace out, everybody! Let's do this! 6 more points! And the 61.
Harika!
Beşiktaş International hopes you enjoyed this program.